Welcome to Driven by Data, Conversations Shaping Safer Roads. This is WDM's new podcast. Today we're going to be discussing PAS 2161, the new road condition monitoring specification to be introduced in April 2026. PAS 2161 is the new way to comply with submitting your road condition data as a local authority, but also it offers the opportunity for revisiting your surveying strategy. I'm going to be joined today by Andy Stevenson, Director of Road Services at W.D.M. Stay tuned if you want to know more about PAS 2161 and how you can use your road surveying strategy to improve the condition, maintenance and management of your roads. So joining me today is Director of Road Services at WDM, Andy Stevenson.
Hello.
Hello, Andy. Andy has got a breadth and depth of knowledge and experience in the highways sector. He's worked both public and private companies, working as head of highways at Cornwall Council, as well as a materials engineer in the private sector for many years. So he's got a lot of experience. To kick us off, Andy, can you tell us a little bit more about PAS 2161, what it is and what that means for our viewers?
Yes, certainly. Well, PAS stands for Publicly Available Standard. So PAS 2161 is the number that's ascribed to that. It's a standard that sits as part of the BSI, British Standards Institute suite of standards, and it was specifically devised to cover road condition monitoring, or RCM as it's sometimes known. It was developed over the course of about 3 or 4 years. It was published in 2024 by a working group that was drawn from across industry, looking at ways in which we could incorporate new innovations in technology into the road condition monitoring community. And that's led to the development of the standard, and then a requirement that's now subsequently come into force for English local authorities to report their road condition standards in accordance with PAS 2161 to the Department for Transport. And that comes in from April of this year.
In terms of the transition, Andy, some people will have used other road condition surveying methodology, Scanner, for example. So I'm wondering what the difference are between Scanner and PAS 2161 and what it might look like for local authorities to transition from one survey to the next. So kind of 2 points to that question.
Yeah, well, Scanner is stands for the Surface Condition Assessment of the National Network of Roads. That's where the acronym comes from. It's the previous monitoring standard. It's been in place for about 20 years, makes use of scanning laser technology and other sensors that are all mounted on the same platform, measures in quite detailed increments the features of the roads. That would be things like the profile, the ride quality that you feel when you drive down a road, the transverse profile, rutting and such like, texture, cracking of the road, and all of those things together married with a forward-facing video. And that gives us, that is traditionally reported to give an RCI, or Road Condition Index, which is generally between a score of 0 and sort of 200 or 240 odd. There's different combinations. Mm-hmm. And the reporting mechanism is on a red, amber, green. So with red being 100 or greater. And that's been used for getting on for 20 years by authorities across the whole of the UK. PAS has come in as technology is developed. There's machine learning, there's different types of sensors, data acquisition systems, and the purpose of PAS is to make the market more open, but also to give the ability for additional data sets to be added in to the road condition monitoring numbers. Now, PAS is reported on a scale of 1 to 5, starting with a road that doesn't require maintenance, and that's the other thing that changes with PAS. I'll come on to that in a minute. So it's a road that doesn't require maintenance, a road that requires light touch maintenance, a road that requires a midlife intervention, a road that maybe requires a more substantial solution, maybe a complete resurfacing, and a road that then is basically structurally unsound and needs total reconstruction. So scale of 1 to 5, and that's each road would be reported on where it sits in that overall envelope. From a scanner's perspective, the data that complements that is in a 1 to 3, red, amber, green, and they are just different ways of looking at the road. But one of the things that PAS does is it opens the market up to other technologies, because scanner is a very specific technology, quite a lot of expensive equipment on it, and there are limited suppliers.
What do road management teams need to think about when they're making that transition? Because obviously they'll have to make it, and there's things they're going to need to consider.
Sure.
What would your advice be?
Well, clearly, if for England, and PAS applies in England only at this moment in time, the requirement to report to the DFT is coming in April of this year, 2026. One of the things to consider is that the fact that the data that will be delivered by whoever the survey contractor is, and it needs to be undertaken by a contractor that has demonstrated that it meets PAS 2161, and there's a list on the Department of Transport website of who those are. WDM are one of those. The key thing is that methodology is going to be different. So some of the attributes that are picked up will be different, but nevertheless they will report a 1 to 5 score. So for example, the road might need resurfacing, it might need a minor sort of treatment. And the key thing for a local authority to consider is that they need to be reporting their road condition data to this new standard. So how one goes about acquiring those data will clearly need to use an accredited or an approved demonstrated survey technique. But the thing to bear in mind when a local authority is looking at this is that Scanner was very much a lane-based survey, so it would drive down the left-hand side of the road and it would measure only the left-hand side of the road, and it would turn around and come back and measure the other side of the road. Most PAS scores now are on carriageway based, so that's both lanes if you're on a single track, a single carriageway road, and those are measured at the same time, so you only need to drive in one direction. Now the reporting requirements to the DFT are based around coverage of networks on an ABC, and that's the other point to mention, is that PAS is only currently required to be reported on the ABC network. Now, the way that you acquire data, and therefore the number of miles or the cost of the survey, is dictated by the fact that if you're on a single carriageway road, clearly a carriageway-based survey will only require one direction. So potentially there's savings there. There's potentially alternative data sets that can be delivered that are captured at the same time. Inventory being one of those. The converse position is that there are very detailed data sets that are used to maintain safety and understand the nature of the failure of a road that are acquired from Scanner that won't be present in the PAS data set because they are totally different acquisitions. So WDM's strategy going forward is to have both surveys on the same platform, so that we can capture both the detailed data that comes from the Scanner specification, and also the new data sets that comes from PAS. So you can get two complementary surveys at the same time.
It looks like it's a time, obviously, of great change in the industry, the biggest change in, I think, 2 decades or something like that.
Certainly.
Yeah. And it looks like as well, this could offer an opportunity really for local authorities to relook at how they kind of strategize their road surveying programs, I guess. Can you talk a little bit more about this in terms of how local authorities should approach their surveying programs? And should they be thinking about, just surveying annually and because it crosses X, Y, and Z box? Or actually, should they be looking at it more strategically and what that would look like, what that would achieve?
Okay. So in the PAS standard, there's a coverage requirement that sets out what the requirement is. And it's only for the A, B, and C road network. U roads, you can survey, but they are not currently required for national reporting standards to the DFT. And again, I emphasise this is only for England because at the moment the devolved authorities, that's Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, have their own methodology. So when we're looking at that strategy, the coverage is the key requirement. So the reporting standards are documented in PAS, and it requires a certain amount of the network to be covered every year and over a 2-year period. So the reporting is the 100% of the length over a 2-year period, and depending on the class of the road, it's either in both directions or one direction. So going about measuring those roads and the strategy that one adopts depends on whether you want to do two surveys in one, a scanner, and because they have different coverage requirements. So some thought is needed. But there are effective ways of combining and getting efficiencies, financial efficiencies in covering those standards. And we'd be quite happy to talk with our clients about how that can be optimised.
Obviously, WDM have got a wealth of kind of services that we offer. And so what, in terms of like the factors that, a comprehensive strategic surveying program encompasses, what do you think is important? Obviously, there are kind of key things that you really need to think about when you're implementing a road surveying strategy.
Well, if you're a local authority, there's two outcomes from a road condition survey strategy. The first is firstly, you've got to report what is required to the DFT. And then the second is, well, okay, we've got to do this, so we do that, but what benefits can we derive from this data to help us manage our road network in a more efficient and effective manner? Now, in order to do that, you need a certain level of granularity of the data. And one of the things that Scanner was very good at was giving you that granularity. PAS is also capable of giving you granularity, but they're different types of data. So PAS, for example, is based on outcomes. So the scores are based on whether you need to do treatments. Scanner is very much based on defects or the characterization of certain attributes of the road surface, which when you marry them together give you the same effect. So from a local authority point of view, they really need to understand what information they need to help them decide how they're going to spend their relatively scarce maintenance budgets. So that might be, how do we decide to do a preventative treatment to try and prevent potholes happening, or if we've got a road that's potholed, obviously we've got to fix those problems and then we need to stop them reoccurring. So there's different strategies, different mechanisms. They require different data to inform those strategies. And again, the easiest way is if you're one of our clients or you want to understand what we can offer you, just come and talk to us and then we can go through all of those different options.
Part of a kind of, I guess, surveying program would cover kind of road safety as well. And I know that from, discussions with you before, and that our SCRIM surveys can really help to inform, road safety programs and skid resistance strategies. Sure. Can you tell us a bit more about what SCRIM can offer and how that might complement, the road assessment vehicle surveying and the PAS 2161 kind of specification?
So all of these surveys are there for a reason, and it's not necessarily just to report to the DFT. They're there to enable local authorities to meet their primary statutory duty, which is under the Highways Act 1980, which is section 41. And that's to keep the highways safe. So potholes, clearly big problem at the moment, really bad winter. So that's a safety defect. So there's a responsibility on the local authority to keep the highway safe, so they need to repair potholes, which is why you see what's going on at the moment. Equally, when you're driving a vehicle, you do need to stop, you need to be able to manoeuvre, and one of the things that allows that to happen is friction between the road surface and the tyre of the vehicle. And SCRIM measures that friction, so it gives a precise measurement of the friction that is generated by a tyre, because it's a tyre rolling down a road generating a force which is measured, and that force is proportional to the friction of the road. So that sits as a complementary data set which enables local authorities to understand how the skidding resistance of their road varies with the season, with the amount of traffic on it, and with the location. So for example, if you want to go around a corner, you will need more friction than if you're just driving on a straight road. So, and the standards set out all of different criteria, and understanding your friction, your SCRIM value, in conjunction with your surface requirements, so whether it be from a RAV survey, a scanner data, or from a PAS survey, it enables you to develop complementary programs that will deal with both safety, the whole totality of what safety looks like, and also ensure that you get longevity of the road going into the future. So a complementary strategy is definitely something that any sensible highway engineer would be looking to achieve.
We've spoken about kind of, obviously safety, and we've spoken about the new PAS specification. What else can you think of that you haven't maybe already kind of touched on is the one thing an authority could start doing tomorrow that would improve kind of their road surveying strategy? I know people need to think about kind of cutting cost, improving safety, and cost is a huge thing, and also meeting kind of the standards that are mandatory. What would your kind of suggestion maybe be about what else that they can think of?
Well, clearly there's a requirement to report data to the DFT, so that's absolutely something that the local authority needs to do. The key question for them is to understand what is it in choosing a survey or a survey type, or looking at complementary survey types, is to understand what the vision for their road network is and their overall strategy. So they will have a highway asset management plan which sets out their strategy. And clearly there's going to be a difference of importance between one road over against the next. And that's not necessarily down to class A, B, C, U. It might be down to the road hierarchy, which is something that most local authorities will have. And that is about how the road is used and the function it performs. So I think the advent or the introduction of PAS 2161 gives local authorities the option to maybe rather than have a one-size-fits-all approach to their survey data collection, is to have horses for courses is the one that the expression that springs to mind. So maybe if you need to know more about a road, you might look at a complementary survey like a PAS from a RAV vehicle, say, for example, whereas on some of the other roads you might be happy to just have a PAS survey. But you've still met the reporting requirements for the DFT, but you've got on the certain hierarchy, you've got a level of data that tells you that you need to know. Things like macro texture, for example, which are a very important component part of safety, particularly high speed.
we've spoken about we've been, thinking about different kind of technologies and talking about a lot of like emerging trends, things like machine learning and AI. I know it's been around for a long time, but it's really gaining traction now. We've spoken about predictive maintenance, which is another kind of really kind of key, I guess, tactic that can be used for a road maintenance and management program. We've spoken about data collection and the importance of data collection and both breadth and depth of data collection. I guess my next question is kind of future gazing that little bit more. What do you think the industry will look like over the next 5 to 10 years? Is there anything that you think might kind of start to kind of gain a bit more momentum or something important that people?
Yeah, I think the thing that we need to be aware of is that things change all the time. Where we all drive cars, we have connected vehicle data that could augment, might replace in some contexts, but it certainly would be complementary to some of the past data sets and indeed to some of the scanner data sets, allowing you to understand what the behaviour on a road is, because that's a key component of road safety. It's not just the physical attributes of the road, but also the context, how people use the road, what's the level of traffic, what type of traffic uses the road. And connected vehicle data can give you some of those figures. It can certainly identify where you've got incidents of harsh braking, for example. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's a defect, but it might indicate a defect. And if you augment that with some of the other data that you've got, then that may well help inform the decision-making process. There is no one-size-fits-all approach here, I think. There is always data. You're always looking for data as a highway engineer to help you make judgment calls, because for a lot of highway engineers, the decisions that will have to be made is not what do we treat, but what do we not treat, because we do not have enough money to do this. So the more data you have that helps you make those informed decisions, the better.
Thank you so much, Andy. We'll kind of wrap up now, but is there anything you wanted to add to our conversation today?
No, I just think that there's no such thing as bad data. There's just data that helps you make the decisions that you need to make. I'm sure PAS will bring different attributes into play, but I do think that from my experience, there are data streams that we currently collect with RAV and with Scanner that will remain to be important, certainly when we look at a holistic approach to how we manage our road network. And that's where we need to be, is making the right decisions at the right time and making the interventions to make sure that we protect the asset that we've got, because it is the most expensive publicly owned asset that exists on this island.
That was Driven by Data, Conversations Shaping Safer Roads, the first episode of WDM's podcast. If you want to know more about PAS 2161 or looking at your road surveying strategy, get in touch or visit the website. Good to see you, and hope to see you for the next episode.